The meeting hall was quiet. Too quiet. 300 alien species sat in their seats, watching the center stage. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some looked like floating crystals. All of them were waiting to see what the human would do. Do-Yun Kim stood alone on the floor. He wore a simple black suit with a blue tie. His hands were relaxed at his sides. He did not look nervous. He did not look scared. He just stood there, waiting. The Vrelnari warlord moved to the speaking platform. He was huge, almost 3 meters. Tall, with 4 thick arms and red skin covered in battle scars. His species had won every war they ever fought. Everyone in the galaxy knew this. Everyone feared them. Humans, the warlord said, his voice deep and loud. You have been part of this council for 30 years. In that time, you have given us nothing. Your ships are weak. Your soldiers are untested. Your weapons are old. You sit here and drink your coffee and make your art, but you do not fight. You do not protect. You are useless. Some of the aliens in the hall made sounds of agreement. Others stayed silent, but all of them watched. So today, the Vrelnari Collective makes a challenge, the warlord continued. We challenge Earth to trial by combat. If you refuse, you will be removed from this council. Any species in the galaxy will be allowed to take your planets. If you accept, we will destroy your fleet and show everyone what happens to weak species who pretend to be strong. The hall filled with whispers. Most aliens thought this was the end for humanity. Humans had no real military. They had no experience with war. They had joined the council 30 years ago as a small, peaceful species. They made friends easily. They told good stories. They brought interesting food. But they were not warriors. The warlord looked down at Do-Yun. What is your answer, human? Do-Yun was quiet for a moment. Then something changed in his face. The corner of his mouth moved up. It became a smile. Not a polite smile. Not a diplomatic smile. A real smile. The kind of smile someone makes when they finally get something they have been waiting for. Finally, Do-Yun said. His voice was soft, but the room's special sound system carried it everywhere. It's finally time. The warlord's 3 eyes narrowed. He looked confused. This was not the reaction he expected. Do-Yun walked forward to the speaking platform. He moved slowly, calmly, like a man without any fear. When he reached the platform, he looked up at the warlord, then turned to face the entire council. The United Earth government accepts your challenge, Do-Yun said clearly. We will meet your fleet at the battle coordinates in 30 days. Thank you for your patience. The hall exploded with noise. Aliens were shouting, asking questions, making bets on how quickly the humans would die. But Do-Yun just turned and walked toward the exit. His smile never left his face. A young woman rushed up beside him as he left the hall. Her name was Ji-Won Park, and she was Do-Yun's assistant. She had worked with him for 5 years, but she had never seen him smile like this. Sir, Ji-Won said quietly as they walked down the empty corridor. The council thinks we are going to die. The Vrelnari have not lost a battle in 400 years. They have 847 warships. We have. How many ships does Earth have? Do-Yun kept walking. His smile got a little bigger. Ji-Won, let me ask you a question. What do you think humanity has been doing for the last 30 years? Ji-Won thought about it. Making art? Building colonies? Trading with other species? Those things, yes, Do-Yun said. But what else? Ji-Won was quiet for a moment. Then her eyes went wide. Preparing. Preparing, Do-Yun repeated. He stopped walking and turned to look at her. Do you know why I took this job 30 years ago? Why I agreed to be Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Council? Ji-Won shook her head. Because I was told that Earth needed time, Do-Yun explained. We needed time to study the galaxy. Time to understand how these species fight. Time to build what we needed to protect ourselves. And I was told that my job was to make sure nobody attacked us before we were ready. By pretending to be weak, Jiwan said slowly. By being friendly, Doyan corrected. By being diplomatic. By being the nice humans who brought coffee and told stories and never caused problems. I spent 30 years letting species like the Vrelnari think we were helpless. And now, finally, they have given us the perfect excuse to show them the truth. He pulled out a small communication device from his pocket. Contact Admiral Somin Lee. Tell her to begin Phase 1. Far away from the council station, deep under the ground on Earth, Admiral Somin Lee sat in a command center. She was 55 years old, with short gray hair and sharp eyes. She had been a soldier her entire adult life. She had trained. She had planned. She had waited. The message from Doyan appeared on her screen. She read it once, then looked up at the men and women around her. They were all watching her, waiting. It's time, Admiral Lay said simply. The room stayed quiet for 3 seconds. Then every person in that room moved at once. Screens lit up. Communications opened. Orders went out to 1,000 different locations across human space. Unseal the shipyards, Admiral Lee commanded. Wake up the fleets. Activate all defense platforms. I want every ship ready to move in 72 hours. One of her officers, a young man named Hagen, looked at the numbers appearing on his screen. His mouth fell open. Admiral, we have over 2,000 ships in reserve. How did we build this many without anyone noticing? Admiral Lee stood up from her chair. She walked to the main display screen, which showed a map of human territory. There were shipyards hidden in asteroids, manufacturing plants on distant moons, training facilities in empty solar systems. All of it had been built slowly, carefully, secretly, over 30 years. We built them, Admiral Lee said, because we knew this day would come. Humans are good at many things. We are good at art and music and making friends. But we are also very good at one other thing. She turned to face her command staff. We are very good at war. Our species spent thousands of years fighting each other on Earth. We almost destroyed ourselves. We learned every possible way to kill, to defend, to survive. And when we finally made peace with each other and went to the stars, do you know what we promised ourselves? Nobody answered. We promised that we would never be victims again, Admiral Lee said. That no alien species would ever make humanity kneel. That we would be ready for anything. So we spent 30 years preparing. And now the Vrelnari are going to learn what happens when you challenge a species that knows how to fight. She looked back at the screen. Send a message to all fleet commanders. Tell them the wait is over. Tell them it's time to show the galaxy who we really are. Back on the council station, Doyun stood at a window looking out at the stars. Jiwan stood beside him, still trying to understand everything. Sir, she said quietly, what if we lose? Doyun finally stopped smiling. His face became serious. We won't lose, Jiwan. The Vrelnari think they are facing a weak species. They think this will be easy. They have no idea what's coming for them. He turned away from the window. In 30 days, the galaxy is going to see the truth about humanity. And after that, nobody will ever underestimate us again. The Galactic Council had been laughing at humanity for years. It started small. A joke here, a dismissive comment there. But over time, it became normal. When Earth's representatives suggested new defense strategies, the military powers would smile and ignore them. When humans warned about dangers in unexplored space, the Council would thank them politely and do nothing. Doyan Kim had sat through hundreds of these meetings. He had listened to species call humans soft. He had heard them say Earth was only good for coffee and entertainment. He had watched powerful species bully smaller ones, knowing that if he spoke up too strongly, Earth might become a target. Every insult, every dismissal, every moment of mockery, he had remembered. And he had reported it all back to Earth, because while the Council was laughing, humanity was learning. Every battle the Council fought, Earth studied. Every weapon system, every ship design, every tactical formation was analyzed by human intelligence officers. Earth sent observers to conflicts across the galaxy, always watching, always taking notes. They collected data on every species' strengths and weaknesses. The Council thought the human observers were there to learn how to be better Council members. They were half right. Humans were learning, but not how to fit in. They were learning how to win. Commander Heijin Choi stood in the command center of the Eds Indomitable. The ship was massive, 3 kilometers long, with weapon systems the Council had never seen. It had been built in a hidden shipyard in the Oort cloud, far from any shipping lanes or exploration routes. The Council did not know it existed. The Indomitable was not alone. "Status report," Heijin said calmly. Around him, dozens of officers worked at their stations. The bridge was quiet and efficient. These were professional soldiers who had trained their entire careers for this moment. Lieutenant Yuna Song looked up from her sensor station. "Sir, the Vrelnari fleet is assembling at the designated coordinates. I count 847 ships. They are arranging themselves in the Talon Strike formation." Heijin nodded. He had expected this. The Vrelnari had used the Talon Strike formation for 4 centuries. It was a spearhead pattern, with the strongest ships at the front and supporting vessels behind. It had broken through every defensive line they had ever faced. "They are predictable," Heijin said. "That's good for us." Yuna looked confused. "Sir, they have 847 warships. That's more than any single human fleet group." Heijin smiled slightly. "True, but how many ships does Earth have in total?" Yuna checked her tactical display. Her eyes went wide. "Sir, according to this, we have over 2,400 warships ready for deployment." "How is that possible? Where did we hide them all?" "Everywhere," Heijin answered. "Asteroid bases, hidden shipyards, manufacturing facilities on moons nobody cared about. We built them slowly, a few at a time, in places nobody was watching. The Council was so sure we were weak that they never looked for signs we were arming ourselves." He walked to the main display screen. It showed the human fleet positions. Ships were spread across the entire battle zone in what looked like a random pattern. But it was not random at all. The Vrelnari think strength means putting all your power in one place, Heijin explained. They think the Talon Strike formation is unbeatable because it concentrates force at a single point. They are wrong. Another officer, a woman named Minji, spoke up from the weapons station. "Commander, all weapon systems are online. Stealth frigates report they are in position. The Vrelnari cannot see them yet." "Good," Heijin said. "Let them think they know where all our ships are. When they commit to their attack, they will realize they walked into a trap." On the observation deck of the Council station, Ambassador Doyan Kim stood with other Council members. They had all gathered to watch the battle. Most of them had placed bets on how quickly the humans would lose. Some thought 10 minutes. Others gave Earth 20 minutes. Nobody thought the humans would last an hour. "Ambassador Kim," said a crystalline being named Torin, his species, the Trellis, prided themselves on logic and reason. "It is still not too late to withdraw. Your species has value. There is no honor in pointless death." Doyan turned to look at the assembled aliens. He saw pity in some faces, amusement in others. Nobody looked worried for the Vrelnari. "Let me tell you something about humans," Doyan said calmly. "Most species in this council achieved space travel during times of peace. You reached for the stars Because you were curious. Because you had resources. Because exploration was safe. He paused, making sure everyone was listening. Humans built our first spacecraft while our planet was still recovering from global wars. We reached other planets while we still had weapons pointed at each. Other on Earth, we learned to travel. Between stars while we were still teaching ourselves. Not to destroy our own world. Some of the aliens shifted. Uncomfortably. You think war is something. That happens occasionally, Doyon continued. For humans, peace is what happens between wars. We spent 10,000 years fighting each other. We became very, very good at it. Then we stopped fighting each other and looked outward. Do you understand what that means? Torin's crystalline form flickered. You are saying humans are naturally violent. No, Doyon corrected. I am saying humans understand violence. We know war. We respect it. We prepare for it. And we have spent 30 years preparing for this exact moment. He pointed at the display screen, showing the Vrelnari fleet. You see 847 warships and think it's overwhelming force. We see it as a target-rich environment. The display suddenly updated. New contacts appeared on the screen. One by one, then by tens, then by hundreds. Human ships dropped out of faster than light. Travel around the Vrelnari fleet. The observation deck fell completely silent. The numbers kept climbing. 100 human ships. 200. 500. 1,000. The aliens watching could not believe what they were seeing. Impossible, someone whispered. Where did they come from? Another asked. Doyon watched the display with satisfaction. We told you. We were preparing. You just were not paying attention. The final count appeared on the screen. Earth had brought 2,400 warships to the battle. The Vrelnari were now outnumbered almost 3 to 1, but numbers were only part of the story. The human ships were not using any formation the Council recognized. They were scattered throughout the battle space in seemingly random positions. Some were very close to Vrelnari ships. Others were far away. It looked like chaos. On the Vrelnari command ship, the warlord stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Where were these ships hiding? How did they build so many without us knowing? His second in command, a scarred veteran named Krell, was just as confused. Sir, their formation makes no sense. They are spread out. They have no concentrated strength. We can break through their center. The warlord's warrior instincts were screaming at him that something was wrong. He had fought in 100 battles. He had seen every trick, every strategy. But this was different. The humans were not fighting the way anyone else did. All ships, the warlord ordered. Combat formation Talon strike. We will drive through their center and split their fleet in half. The Vrelnari ships began to move. They formed their traditional spearhead, with the heaviest warships at the front. It was the formation that had won them 4 centuries of victories. On the Indomitable, Commander Haitian watched the enemy fleet commit to their attack. They are doing exactly what we predicted. Lieutenant Song, confirm all units are in position. Una checked her screens. Sir, all ships report ready. Stealth frigates are in the enemy formation. Fighter squadrons are prepared to launch. Killbox is armed and active. Haitian opened a communication channel to the entire human fleet. Over 2,400 ships received his message simultaneously. All ships, this is Commander Choi. For 30 years, the galaxy has thought humans were weak. For 30 years, they have dismissed us as nothing more than artists and diplomats. Today, we show them the truth. Today, we show them that humanity has not forgotten how to fight. Execute Protocol Mongoose. The human fleet moved as one. What happened next would change the galaxy forever. The seemingly random positions of Earth's ships revealed their true purpose. As the Vrelnari fleet charged forward in their Talon strike formation, they flew directly into a three-dimensional trap. Stealth frigates that had been invisible suddenly appeared inside the Vrelnari formation. They were so close that the Vrelnari point defense systems could not target them effectively. Torpedoes launched at point-blank range, striking the enemy ships before they could react. Human ships that had seemed far away suddenly accelerated to impossible speeds, cutting off retreat routes. The scattered formation was actually a carefully designed kill box, with overlapping fields of fire that left no safe space for the Vrelnari fleet. And then the fighters launched. Captain Min-Jae Kwon led the first fighter wing into the chaos. His small craft moved with incredible precision, making turns that should have been impossible. The G-forces should have killed him. But human pilots were different now. Genetic enhancements and cybernetic interfaces allowed them to withstand forces that would turn other species into pulp. Gold Squadron, Min-Jae called over the comm. Target their carriers. Remember the mission. We are not here to destroy them. We are here to make them surrender. His squadron moved like a school of fish, each pilot perfectly coordinated with the others. They dove between the massive Vrelnari warships, their weapons precisely targeting engines and weapon systems. They were not trying to kill. They were trying to cripple. The Vrelnari warlord watched in horror as his invincible fleet was torn apart. The Vrelnari warlord had fought in wars across 50 star systems. He had commanded fleets against enemies who outnumbered him. He had faced desperate last stands and overwhelming odds. He had always won. Always. For 400 years, the Vrelnari military had been unstoppable. Now, for the first time in his long life, the warlord felt fear. His tactical display showed red everywhere. Red meant damage. Red meant ships dying. Red meant his fleet was being destroyed. The human ships moved in patterns he could not predict. Their weapons hit weak points his engineers had forgotten existed. And their pilots flew like beings who did not care if they died. "Sir, we have lost 40 ships," his second-in-command Krell reported. His voice was shaking. "No, wait. 50 ships. 60. The count keeps rising." The warlord slammed his fist against his command throne. How? How are they doing this? On the Indomitable, Commander Ha-Jin Choi watched the battle unfold exactly as planned. 30 years of study had given humanity one critical advantage. They knew everything about how the Council species fought. The Vrelnari used the same formations, the same tactics, the same weapon firing patterns they had used for centuries. Why would they change? They always won, but humanity had studied those patterns. They had run simulations thousands of times. They knew exactly where every Vrelnari ship would be at every moment of the battle. And they had designed Protocol Mongoose specifically to counter the Talon strike formation. "Lieutenant Song, status of the stealth frigates?" Ha-Jin asked calmly. Yuna checked her sensors. All 12 frigates have completed their torpedo runs. They are withdrawing to safe distance. 37 enemy ships have sustained critical damage to their engines. They are effectively disabled. Excellent. And the fighter squadrons? Captain Minja's wing has destroyed 15 enemy carrier groups. The Vrelnari have launched their fighters, but our pilots are outperforming them significantly. Ha-Jin nodded. The fighter advantage had been expected. Vrelnari fighters were controlled by AI systems that followed predictable patterns. Human fighters had human pilots. And human pilots could do things no AI would ever attempt. In the middle of the battle, Captain Min-Jae Kwon pushed his fighter into a barrel roll that generated 11 Gs of force. His body was pressed into his seat with crushing weight. A normal human would have blacked out. But Min-Jae was not a normal human anymore. None of the pilots were Dot. The enhancement program had been controversial on Earth. Some people said it was wrong to modify human bodies. Others argued was necessary. In the end, every combat pilot had volunteered. They knew what was coming. They knew humanity would need every advantage. Gold 3, break left, Minjay commanded. His squadron moved as one unit. They were connected through a neural link network that allowed them to share thoughts almost instantly. It was not quite telepathy, but it was close. A Vrelnari fighter tried to follow Gold 3's movement and could not match the term. Human fighters were smaller, faster, and more maneuverable. The Vrelnari pilot fired, but his shots went wide. Gold 3 came around behind him and disabled his engines with a precise burst. Enemy fighter disabled, Gold 3 reported. Not destroyed. Pilot should survive. Good, Minjay confirmed. Remember, we are not here to commit genocide. We are here to win. That was the critical part of Earth's strategy. The Council needed to see that humanity was powerful, but also that humanity was not cruel. They needed to fear Earth's military, but not hate it. Every disabled enemy ship was a message. Humanity could have killed you, but chose not to. The Vrelnari warlord watched another 10 ships fall silent on his display. Their engines were destroyed. Their weapons were offline. They were still intact, and their crews were still alive, but they were out of the fight. They are toying with us, Krell said quietly. They could destroy us, but they are choosing to disable us instead. The warlord's pride was shattered. Being defeated was one thing. Being defeated while the enemy showed mercy was worse. It meant the humans did not even see the Vrelnari as a real threat. All ships, the warlord said, his voice heavy. Fall back. Emergency retreat. All vessels capable of faster-than-light travel, retreat immediately. It was the first time in Vrelnari history that a warlord had ordered a retreat. Around the galaxy, species monitoring the battle could not believe what they were seeing. The invincible Vrelnari were running away, but Commander Hagen was not done yet. Lieutenant Song, prepare to reveal the avalanche, he ordered. Yuna's hands hesitated over her controls. Sir, are you sure? The avalanche was meant as a deterrent. If we show it now, we reveal our maximum capability. Exactly, Hagen said. The galaxy needs to understand that what they have seen today is not Earth's full strength. They need to know we have been holding back. He opened the fleet-wide channel. All ships, move to safe distance. Activate the avalanche. In the darkness beyond the battle, something massive began to power up. It had been sitting there the entire time, invisible to all sensors, waiting. Now its stealth systems deactivated, and the Council's sensor arrays finally detected it. The object was enormous. It was not a ship. Ships had engines and crew quarters and life support systems. This was a weapon. Only a weapon. A mobile fortress designed for one purpose, to destroy fleets. The avalanche was 5 kilometers long and covered in weapon systems. It had enough firepower to destroy a small moon. It had shields that could withstand attacks from an entire fleet. And it had been built in complete secrecy over 15 years. On the Council observation deck, the assembled aliens stared at the display in horror. Even the species that had been amused by humanity's challenge were now silent. The avalanche's presence alone was a message. Everything you have seen is just a fraction of what we can do. Ambassador Doyan Kim stood quietly, watching the reactions around him. Fear, shock, disbelief. Some of the military powers were already calculating what this meant for the balance of power. Some of the smaller species were wondering if Earth would become their protector or their new oppressor. That, Doyan said clearly, is what 30 years of preparation looks like. That is what happens when you give a species enough time to build in peace. We could have revealed our fleet years ago. We could have threatened the Council. We could have used our strength to take what we wanted. He turned to face the assembled representatives. But we did not. Because Earth does not want to conquer the galaxy. We want to live in it safely. We want to make sure that no species can threaten us or our friends. And now we have the power to ensure that. The Vrelnari fleet was retreating quickly, but they were moving slowly. Many of their ships were damaged. Some had to be towed by others. It would take them weeks to return home. And everyone in the galaxy would see them limping back, defeated and humiliated. Commander Hajian watched them go. Lieutenant Song, casualty report. Checking now, sir. Yuna worked her console for a moment. We have 17 ships with minor damage. 3 ships with moderate damage. 0 ships destroyed. Total human casualties. 43 injured, 0 dead. Hajian allowed himself a small smile. And the Vrelnari? They have lost 68 ships completely disabled. Another 200 ships with significant damage. Best estimate of their casualties. 12,000 injured, approximately 300 dead. Those deaths were unavoidable? Hajian asked seriously. Yes, sir. They occurred when their ship's power systems failed during the fight. Our pilots did everything possible to minimize casualties. Hajian nodded. Every death was a tragedy, even enemy deaths. But this was war, and war had consequences. The important thing was that Earth had won decisively while showing restraint. The galaxy would remember that dot back on Earth, in the buried command center. Admiral Soman Lay watched the battle results come in. Around her, the command staff was celebrating. They were cheering, hugging each other, crying with relief. 30 years of work had succeeded beyond their best hopes. Admiral Lee did not celebrate. She sat in her chair, watching the displays, making sure every human ship was accounted for, making sure the wounded were being treated, making sure the victory did not make anyone careless. Admiral, one of her officers said, "We did it. We actually did it. We won a battle," Admiral Lee corrected. "Now comes the harder part. Now we have to win the peace." She pulled up a communication link to Ambassador Doyeon Kim. His face appeared on her screen, and she could see the council chamber behind him. "Ambassador," Admiral Lay said, "the fleet is ready for Phase 2 if needed. But I am hoping you can handle things diplomatically from here." Doyeon nodded. "The council is in shock right now. Some are afraid. Some are angry. Some are impressed. This is our chance to reshape the power structure of the galaxy. If we handle this correctly, we can create something better than what existed before. And if we handle it incorrectly?" Admiral Lee asked. "Then we become the next empire," Doyeon said quietly. "The next species that uses military might to dominate others. And eventually, we become the villains we defeated." Admiral Lee understood. "Then we better handle it correctly." The communication ended. Admiral Lee stood up and addressed her command staff. "Listen to me. We won today because we were smarter, better prepared, and more disciplined than our enemy. But this was the easy part. The hard part starts now." Everyone stopped celebrating and paid attention. "From this moment forward, the galaxy will be watching everything we do," Admiral Lai continued. "They will be looking for signs that we are abusing our power. They will be testing us to see if we are trustworthy. Our mission is no longer to win battles. Our mission is to prove that humanity deserves the strength we have built." She looked at each face in the command center. "We are not conquerors. We are not an empire. We are guardians. We protect. We defend. We use our strength to create peace, not to dominate. If you cannot accept that mission, leave now. Because that is what we are going to do." Nobody left. "Good," Admiral Lee said. "Then let's show the galaxy what humanity really stands for." 3 days after the battle, the Galactic Council held an emergency session. The chamber was more crowded than usual. Every species wanted to be present, for what would happen next. Some came hoping to see humanity punished for their deception. Others came hoping to see a new power structure emerge. All of them were afraid. Ambassador Do-yeon Kim walked into the chamber wearing the same black suit and blue tie he always wore. He did not look triumphant. He did not look proud. He looked calm and professional, exactly as he had for 30 years. But everyone in the room knew that everything had changed. The session began with accusations. The first to speak was the Corinthian ambassador, a reptilian being named Velk. His species controlled many of the military supply contracts in the council. They had made enormous profits selling weapons to other species. Now they saw their business threatened. "This is outrageous," Velk hissed, his forked tongue flickering. The humans deliberately deceived this council. They built an illegal military force. They violated the spirit of cooperation that the council represents. Do-yeon waited patiently for Velk to finish. Then he spoke calmly. "Ambassador Velk, I invite you to review the council charter. Please show me which law we violated. Which treaty did we break? Which regulation did we ignore?" Velk's scales changed color, a sign of anger in his species. "The law says species must report major military buildups." "It says we must report military buildups intended for aggression," Do-yeon corrected. "Every ship we built was for defense." "We did not attack anyone. We did not threaten anyone. We simply prepared to defend ourselves if attacked. That is not only legal, it is encouraged by the council charter." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Do-yeon was right. Earth had not technically violated any laws. The Trellis representative, Torin, spoke next. His crystalline form pulsed with different colors as he thought through the logic. "But Ambassador Kim, you brought 2,400 ships to a challenge that only required you to defend against 847. That is not defensive preparation. That is overwhelming force. The Vrel-Nari brought 847 ships to destroy us," Do-yeon replied simply. "We brought enough ships to make sure they could not. Is it wrong to be thorough in one's defense? Another species tried a different approach. You deceived us. You pretended to be weak while building this fleet. That is dishonest." Do-yeon's expression hardened slightly. "We did not pretend anything. We were friendly. We were cooperative. We contributed to council projects. We helped smaller species with trade and technology. We did everything the council asked of us. The fact that you assumed we were weak because we were kind is your mistake, not our deception." The chamber fell silent. Nobody had a good response to that. Then the Vrel-Nari warlord stood. The chamber went completely quiet. Everyone wanted to hear what he would say. His species had just suffered their first defeat in 4 centuries. His pride had been shattered. Some expected him to call for revenge. Others thought he might challenge the legitimacy of the battle. The warlord walked slowly to the speaking platform. He looked older than before, tired, but he stood straight and spoke clearly. "The Vrel-Nari Collective wishes to address the council," he said. His voice was different now, less arrogant, more respectful. "We challenged Earth to trial by combat. Earth accepted. We fought. We lost." He turned to look directly at Do-yeon. "The humans defeated us fairly. Their strategy was superior. Their technology was superior. Their warriors were superior. We acknowledge this without reservation." The chamber was absolutely silent. "According to the rules of trial by combat," the warlord continued, "the Vrel-Nari Collective surrenders our council voting privileges for 1 standard cycle. We accept this penalty. We also formally apologize to the human species for underestimating them and for threatening their worlds." It was an incredible moment. The Vrel-Nari never apologized. Never. Their warrior culture considered apologies to be signs of weakness. But the warlord was doing it anyway. Do-Yun stood and bowed respectfully. The United Earth Government accepts your surrender with honor. The Vrelnari fought with courage, and we respect your warriors. We hope that in the future, our species can have a better relationship. The warlord bowed back, then returned to his seat. Some of the council members seemed relieved. If the Vrelnari accepted defeat, then perhaps this crisis could be resolved peacefully. But Do-Yun was not finished. However, he said, drawing everyone's attention back to him, this battle has revealed a larger problem with the council. For too long, military power has been used as a threat. Species with large fleets have been able to bully smaller species. The trial by combat system has been abused. Ambassador Yoonji Han stood up. She represented the human colonies in the Korean sector, and she had been waiting for this moment. I formally propose a reformation of council military policy. No species should be able to use trial by combat as a tool of intimidation. The council should exist to promote cooperation, not to allow the strong to dominate the weak. Smaller species throughout the chamber began voicing their agreement. For years, they had been bullied by the military powers. They had been forced to accept unfair trade deals and unfavorable policies because they could not defend themselves. Now they saw an opportunity for change. Velk, the Quinthian ambassador, realized what was happening. And who will enforce this new policy? You? Will Earth become the new military tyrant of the Council? Do-Yun shook his head. No, Earth does not want to rule the Council. We want to protect it. We propose that Earth becomes the guarantor of Council peace. Any species that tries to use trial by combat to bully smaller nations will face Earth's fleet. Not to conquer them, not to destroy them, but to defend the victims. That is the same thing, Velk argued. You will just use your military to control everyone. Will we? Do-Yun asked. Then explain this. Why did we not destroy the Vrelnari fleet? We could have. We had the power. We had the justification. They attacked us. But we chose to disable their ships instead of destroying them. We chose to minimize casualties. We chose mercy over domination. Does that sound like a species that wants to control everyone? The chamber was silent again. Do-Yun's point was difficult to argue with. Earth had shown both strength and restraint. A small insect-like being named Kura spoke up. Her species, the Chittik, were one of the smallest members of the Council. They had been bullied for decades. Ambassador Kim, if your proposal is accepted, would Earth defend species like mine, even though we have nothing to offer you in return? Do-Yun looked at her. Yes, that is exactly what we would do, because the purpose of strength should be to protect those who cannot protect themselves. That is what Earth believes. Over the next several hours, the Council debated the proposal. The military powers tried to block it. They argued it would give Earth too much power. They claimed it was unnecessary. They said it would be too expensive, but the smaller species were united. They had seen what the military powers had ignored. Earth could have destroyed the Vrelnari, but chose not to. Earth could have used their victory to make demands, but instead offered protection. Earth had power, but seemed to have principles too in the end. The vote was close, but the proposal passed. Earth would become the guarantor of Council peace. An Earth representative would serve as commander of the Council Defense Initiative. Earth would station ships throughout Council space to protect smaller species from aggression. The military powers had lost their ability to intimidate. The balance of power had shifted. After the session, Captain Hae-Yu Nam sat in the military liaison section with Lieutenant Commander Sun-Ho Park. They watched as the council members filed out of the chamber. Some angry, some relieved, all of them processing the new reality. Do you think they understand yet? Hae-Yu whispered, "Understand what?" Sun-Ho replied quietly, "That this was always the plan." The Vrel-Nari challenge was not a crisis. It was an opportunity. Earth needed a way to reveal our strength without looking like aggressors. They gave us the perfect excuse. Sun-Ho smiled slightly. 30 years is a long time to wait for the right moment. Humans are patient when we need to be, Hayeyu said. We spent 30 years being underestimated, letting species like the Vrel-Nari think we were helpless, waiting for them to challenge us. And now we have what we wanted, the authority to protect the weak and the power to enforce peace. It is clever, Sun-Ho admitted. We are not conquerors. We are guardians. We did not take power. We were given it. Hayeyu nodded. And as long as we use that power responsibly, the galaxy will accept it. But if we ever abuse it, if we ever become the bullies we defeated, everything will fall apart. Then we better not become bullies. Sun-Ho said that in his private office. Do-Yeon Kim sat alone for the first time in days. He was exhausted. 30 years of playing the role of friendly, harmless diplomat had been difficult. 30 years of enduring insults and dismissals, while knowing Earth was preparing for this moment. But it had worked. A message appeared on his screen. It was from Admiral So-Min Lee. Congratulations, Ambassador. Phase 2 is complete. The Council has accepted Earth's new role. Now comes Phase 3, proving we deserve the trust they have given us. Are you ready? Do-Yeon typed his response. I have been ready for 30 years. Let's show them what humanity can do when we are not hiding anymore. He sent the message and looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Vrel-Nari fleet was limping home. Somewhere, smaller species were celebrating their new protection. Somewhere, military powers were trying to figure out how to respond to this new reality. And Earth, the species that had been dismissed and underestimated and mocked for 3 decades, was now the most powerful military force in the galaxy. The question now was whether humanity would use that power wisely, whether they would be the guardians they promised to be, or whether they would become another empire that needed to be defeated someday. Do-Yeon had spent 30 years making sure humanity was ready for this moment. Now he would spend however many years he had left making sure humanity lived up to its promises. The galaxy was watching, and humanity would not disappoint. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Nexus Point. The galaxy was different now, not in obvious ways. The same species still traded goods. The same ships still traveled between stars. The same council still met to discuss policies and resolve disputes. But underneath the surface, everything had changed. Earth was no longer the friendly newcomer that everyone dismissed. Earth was now the guardian, the protector, the species with the largest fleet and the most advanced weapons. And more importantly, Earth was the species that everyone was watching to see if they would keep their promises. Admiral So-Min Lee stood in her office, now located on the council station rather than buried under Earth. She had been promoted to Commander of the Council Defense Initiative, a position created specifically for Earth's military leadership. It was an honor. It was also an enormous responsibility. She was reviewing deployment reports when her assistant knocked on the door. Admiral, you have a visitor. Ambassador Do-Yeon Kim. Send him in, Admiral Lee said. Do-Yeon entered, looking tired but satisfied. He sat down without being asked, something he had never done before. Their relationship had changed over the past 30 years. They had started as military commander and diplomat. Now they were old friends who had accomplished something remarkable together. How are the deployments going? Do-Yeon asked. Slowly, Admiral Lee admitted. We have ships stationed in 47 systems now, protecting smaller species who requested our help. But there are complications. Some species do not trust you as yet. Others are asking for more protection than we can provide. And the military powers are testing us constantly. Doyon nodded. The Corinthians? They blockaded the Tanir system 2 days ago. They are claiming ancient territorial rights and refusing to allow council inspectors. And the Tanir are under our protection agreement, Doyon said. So this is a direct test to see if we will actually defend them. Exactly, Admiral Lee confirmed. If we do nothing, the protection agreements become meaningless. If we respond with force, we prove that we are just another military power using threats. We need a third option. Doyon thought for a moment. Send Admiral Taijin Kang with Task Force 7. But his orders are to resolve this without firing a single shot. If he cannot do that, we have failed. Admiral Lee nodded and sent the orders. Then she asked the question that had been bothering her. Doyon, do you ever worry that we have become what we opposed? That Earth is now the dominant military power, and history suggests that always leads to abuse eventually? Every day, Doyon admitted. Every single day, I worry about that. Which is why we built safeguards into the system. He pulled up a document on his tablet. Every deployment requires approval from a council of species representatives, not just Earth. We share our technology with our allies instead of hoarding it. We allow any species to inspect our military facilities. We made ourselves accountable. But accountability only matters if we accept being held accountable, Admiral Lee said. What happens when Earth's interests conflict with our principles? What happens when protecting a small species hurts our economy or our security? Then we choose principles over interests, Doyon said firmly. That is the only way this works. The moment we decide Earth's benefits are more important than our promises, we lose our moral authority. And without that, we are just another empire. Admiral Lee wanted to believe him. But she had been a soldier for 40 years. She knew how easy it was to justify terrible things in the name of security or necessity. At the Tanir system. Admiral Taijin Kang arrived with Task Force 7. He was 53 years old, a veteran of the Secret Fleet program and one of the most diplomatic military commanders Earth had. His orders were clear: resolve. This without violence. The Corinthian fleet consisted of 38 warships surrounding the Tanir homeworld. They were preventing any ships from entering or leaving. The Tanir were a peaceful species of traders. They had no military. They were completely helpless. Admiral Kang opened a communication channel to the Corinthian commander. This is Admiral Taijin Kang of the Earth Defense Force. The Tanir system is under council protection. You are in violation of council law. Please withdraw your fleet so we can begin negotiations. The Corinthian commander, a scarred veteran named Drax, laughed. Earth thinks they can order us around? You won one battle against the Vrelnari. That does not make you the rulers of the galaxy. Leave now, or we will show you that the Corinthians are not as easy to defeat. Admiral Kang had expected this response. He activated Task Force 7's new quantum interdiction field. It was a technology the Council had never seen before. Humanity had developed it specifically for situations like this. The field created a massive bubble of space where faster-than-light travel was impossible. Any ship inside the field could not jump to light speed. They could fly at normal speeds, but that would take years to escape. Commander Drax, Admiral Kang said calmly, you can maintain your blockade if you want, but you will be maintaining it for the next several years, because nobody is leaving this system until negotiations are complete. Your choice. Begin talking now, or explain to your government why your entire fleet is trapped here. On the Corinthian flagship, Commander Drax stared at his tactical display in disbelief. His engineers confirmed that the field was real. They were trapped. All 38 ships could not escape. Drax realized he had been outplayed. Earth had not threatened to destroy his fleet. They had not even fired a weapon. They had simply made it impossible for him to leave until he agreed to talk. "Very well," Drax said through gritted teeth. "We will negotiate." The crisis was resolved without a single shot being fired. The Corinthians agreed to international mediation of the territorial dispute, with Earth guaranteeing everyone's security during negotiations. It took 3 weeks, but eventually a fair agreement was reached that satisfied both the Corinthians and the Tenir. The news spread across the galaxy quickly. Earth had faced its first real test as Guardian, and they had passed. They had not used violence. They had not destroyed their enemies. They had found a clever, peaceful solution that protected the weak while respecting the strong. More species began requesting protection agreements. The Council Defense Initiative grew rapidly. Within 6 months, Earth had ships stationed in over 200 systems in the Korean sector colonies. Far from Earth but connected by trade and culture, Councillor Jiwon Park stood before a gathering of settlers. These were people from dozens of different species who had fled persecution and found safety under Earth's protection. 30 years ago, Jiwon told the crowd, humanity joined the Galactic Council as nobody. We were primitive. We were weak. The powerful species laughed at us. They thought our kindness was weakness. They thought our art and culture meant we could not fight. She gestured to the human warships visible in orbit, their presence a shield against any threat. But we showed them something important. We showed them that being kind does not mean being weak. That making art does not mean you have forgotten how to make war. That choosing peace does not mean you are incapable of victory. The crowd cheered. There were humans in the audience, but also Tenir and Chittick, and dozens of other small species who had been bullied and oppressed by larger powers. For 30 years, we let them underestimate us, Jiwon continued. We let them think we were helpless. And we used every second of that time to prepare, to build, to make sure that when the moment came, nobody would ever threaten us again. Nobody would ever threaten our friends again. She paused, making sure everyone was listening. But here is the most important part. We could have used our power to conquer. We could have taken revenge on species that dismissed us. We could have become another empire. We chose not to. We chose to be protectors instead of rulers. And that choice is what makes us different. Back on Earth, in the same command center where the 30-year plan had begun, Admiral Soman Lay stood before a memorial wall. It bore the names of thousands of people who had worked in secret to build humanity's defense. Engineers who designed ships, soldiers who trained without recognition, intelligence officers who gathered information, diplomats who endured insults while maintaining their cover. Commander Heijin Choi stood beside her, looking at the names. "Do you think they knew?" he asked quietly. "The ones who started this 3 decades ago. Do you think they knew it would work?" Admiral Lie considered the question carefully. "I think they hoped. They saw a galaxy where only the strong were respected, where peaceful species were victims. They refused to let humanity be prey. So they built something that could protect us. Peace through superior firepower," Heijin quoted. "Peace through superior firepower and the wisdom not to use it," Admiral Lee corrected. "That is the balance we must maintain forever. The galaxy accepted us as guardians because we proved we could destroy but chose not to. If we ever forget that second part, if we ever start using our power to dominate instead of protect, we become everything we fought against." Heijin nodded slowly. "It is a heavy responsibility." "Yes," Admiral Lee agreed, "but it is one we chose, and one we must honor." They stood in silence for a moment, thinking about the future. Earth's fleets were the most powerful in the galaxy. Earth's technology was the most advanced. Earth's influence was growing every day. That power could be used for good or for evil. The choice would have to be made again and again, every time a crisis emerged. every time Earth's interests conflicted with its principles. On the council station, Ambassador Do-Young Kim sat in his office, now designated as the permanent Earth representative to the council. He had spent 30 years waiting for this moment. 30 years playing the role of friendly, harmless diplomat while Earth prepared for war. 30 years being underestimated, dismissed, and mocked. Now Earth was the most powerful military force in the galaxy. The question was whether humanity would use that power wisely. Do-Young received a message from Admiral Lee. It was simple. Phase 3 is complete. We have proven we can keep our promises. Now we just have to keep proving it, every day, for as long as Earth exists.